Continuing with Jordan Peterson's 12 Rules for Life, this is rule number 9. Assume that the person you are listening to might know something you don't. And this section of rule number 9 is titled, Figure It Out for Yourself. I decided instead to listen. I have learned not to steal my clients' problems from them. I don't want to be the redeeming hero or the deus ex machina, not in someone else's story. I don't want their lives. So I asked her to tell me what she thought, and I listened. She talked a lot. When we were finished, she still didn't know if she had been raped, and neither did I. Life is very complicated. Sometimes you have to change the way you understand everything to properly understand a single something. Was I raped? Can it be a very complicated question? The mere fact that the question would present itself in this form indicates the existence of infinite layers of complexity, to say nothing of 5 times. There are a myriad of questions hidden inside. Was I raped? Was it rape? Was it consent? What constitutes appropriate sexual caution? How should a person defend herself? Where does the fault lie? Was I raped? Is a hydra. If you cut off the head of a hydra, 7 more grow. That's life. Miss S would have had to talk for 20 years to figure out whether she had been raped, and someone would have had to be there to listen. I started the process, but circumstances made it impossible for me to finish. She left therapy with me only somewhat less ill-formed and vague than when we met the first time. But at least she didn't leave as the living embodiment of my damned ideology. He really was trying to help her, not to promote his ideology. The people I listen to need to talk because that's how people think. People need to think, otherwise they wander blindly into pits. When people don't think, they simulate the world and plan how to act in it. If they do a good job of simulating, they can figure out what stupid things they shouldn't do. Then they cannot do them. Then they don't have to suffer the consequences. That's the purpose of thinking, but we can't do it alone. We simulate the world and plan our actions in it. Only human beings do this. That's how brilliant we are. We make little avatars of ourselves. We place those avatars in fictional worlds, then we watch what happens. If our avatar thrives, then we act like he does in the real world. Then we thrive, we hope. If our avatar fails, we don't go there if we have any sense. We let him die in the fictional world so that we don't have to really die in the present. Imagine 2 children talking. The younger one says, "Wouldn't it be fun to climb up on the roof?" He has just placed a little avatar of himself in a fictional world, but his older sister objects. She chimes in. "That's stupid," she says. "What if you fall off the roof? What if Dad catches you?" The younger child can then modify the original simulation, draw the appropriate conclusion, and let the whole fictional world wither or vine, or not. Maybe the risk is worth it, but at least now it can be factored in. The fictional world is a bit more complete, and the avatar a bit wiser. People think they think, but it's not true. It's mostly self-criticism that passes for thinking. True thinking is rare, just like true listening. Thinking is listening to yourself. It's difficult. To think, you have to be at least 2 people at the same time. Then you have to let those people disagree. Thinking is an internal dialogue between 2 or more different views of the world. Viewpoint 1 is an avatar in a simulated world. It has its own representations of the past, present, and future, and its own ideas about how to act. So do viewpoints 2 and 3 and 4. Thinking is the process by which these internal avatars imagine and articulate their worlds to one another. You can't set straw men against one another when they're thinking either, because you're not thinking. You're rationalizing, post hoc. You're matching what you want against a weak opponent so that you don't have to change your mind. You're propagandizing. You're using doublespeak. You're using your conclusions to justify your proofs. You're hiding from the truth. Truth thinking is complex and demanding. It requires you to be articulate speaker and careful, judicious listener at the same time. It involves conflict, so you have to tolerate conflict. Conflict involves negotiation and compromise, so you have to learn to give and take and to modify your premises and adjust your thoughts. Even your perceptions of the world. Sometimes it results in the defeat and elimination of 1 or more internal avatar. They don't like to be defeated or eliminated either. They're hard to build. They're valuable. They're alive. They like to stay alive. They'll fight to stay alive. You better listen to them. If you don't, they'll go underground and turn into devils and torture you. In consequence, thinking is emotional, painful, as well as physiological, demanding. More so than anything else, except not thinking. But you have to be very articulate and sophisticated to have all of this occur inside your own head. What are you to do then if you aren't very good at thinking, at being two people at one time? That's easy, you talk. But you need someone to listen. A listening person is your collaborator and your opponent. A listening person tests your talking and your thinking without having to say anything. A listening person is a representative of common humanity. He stands for the crowd. Now the crowd is by no means always right, but it's commonly right, it's typically right. If you say something that takes everyone aback, therefore you should reconsider what you say. I say that, knowing full well that controversial opinions are sometimes correct, sometimes so much so that the crowd will perish if it refuses to listen. It is for this reason, among others, that the individual is morally obligated to stand up and tell the truth of his or her own experience. But something new and radical is still almost wrong. You need good, even great reasons to ignore or defy general public opinion. That's your culture. It's a mighty oak. You perch on one of its branches. If the branch breaks, it's a long way down, farther perhaps than you think. If you're reading this book, there's a strong probability that you're a privileged person. You can read. You have time to read. You're perched high in the clouds. It took untold generations to get to you where you are. A little gratitude might be in order. If you're going to insist on bending the world on your way, you better have your reasons. If you're going to stand your ground, you better have your reasons. You better have thought them through. You might have otherwise been in for a very hard landing. You should do what other people do, unless you have a very good reason not to. If you're in a rut, at least you know that other people have traveled that path. Out of that rut is too often off the road. And in the desert there awaits off the road there are highwaymen and monsters. So speaks wisdom. That was from Jordan Peterson's 12 Rules for Life. That was a very entertaining part of Rule 9, which is assume that the person you are listening to might know something you don't. My name is Gregory Brandt. I too am a writer. I wrote a book called Gonzo Education. If you enjoyed my reading of that, don't forget to hit the thumbs up button and the subscribe button if you haven't already, and have a nice day.